it better. Those are the facts. Facts are stubborn things. I hope that as a Congress we can rise to the needs of this great nation. Thank you.
Gentleman from Texas.
I am pleased to yield 3 minutes to, again, another key freshman member of the Joint Economic Committee, also a member of the Budget Committee, who understands, again, what it takes to get this terribly sluggish economy back on track. The gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Mulvaney. 3 minutes.
Gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also thank my colleague from Texas, Mr. Brady, for the opportunity. There's so much we could talk about here tonight. And it is unfortunate we only have a few minutes to talk about each of these budgets. But one of the things that I heard the gentlelady from New York mention early in her presentation was that the budget that we've offered as a Republican Party is noteworthy mostly for its austerity. I would disagree with that. I think it's noteworthy mostly for the fact that it balances. It balances, does something the President's budget does not do, does something that I would expect the Democrat offering later on this evening does not do. It balances. It's a word that our colleagues across the aisle, Mr. Chairman, like to use from time to time. They want an approach that balances. I used to think that the word balance would actually mean that the budget would balance. They would have us believe that what it really means is they want to maybe sort of cut taxes, raise taxes and sort of cut spending. The truth of the matter is, though, that every single budget that they've offered has only increased taxes and increased spending. That's true of the President's budget, which we'll be taking up later this evening. I imagine it's true of Mr. Van Hollen's budget that we'll be taking up later this evening. And I think it's important to look at what would actually work. We're not the first country to go through this situation. And in fact, if you look at the other countries that have had debt crises like we are facing now, what you can see is that some of them have managed to get out of it. And they've managed to get out of it mostly by cutting spending. In fact, a ratio of roughly 7 to 1 on spending cuts versus tax increases is what actually works. And you can do better than this. You can point to other countries that have managed to save themselves without raising taxes by a single penny. You cannot point to a single country that has done it by raising taxes on even a one-to-one basis, as we'll take up tonight with Simpson-Bowles. But again, the President's budget, the Democrat budget, doesn't even come close to this. We couldn't even put it on the graph because it both increases taxes and increases spending. Not even coming close to what has worked in every other developed nation that has tried to do exactly what we are trying to do with our budget tonight. Look, I spent a lot of time back home, and I know that folks back home might be willing under certain circumstances to pay more taxes. They might do that, for example, if they could trust us not to waste the money. They might be willing to do that if they could trust us to actually put the money towards the debt and the deficits. But we don't do that. What have we always given them, mostly for my colleagues across the aisle, but also for my party in past years? What have we always given them? We've always given them new taxes now, and deficit spending now, and new waste now, in exchange for a promise of spending reductions someplace down the road that never come. I think it's time for us to acknowledge that our colleagues are trying to sell us a definition of the word balance that doesn't make any sense. It's time for us to reclaim the definition of that word and say, look, we are the ones offering a balanced budget. We are the ones who are offering a balanced approach. We are one of the ones that are offering a way to pay off the debt. I think it's a fair question to ask. The money that we borrowed yesterday, do we ever really intend to pay it back? The Ryan budget allows us a way to do that. The GOP budget allows us a way to do that. The President's budget never moves to surplus. The Van Hollen budget, may I have another 30 seconds, please, Mr. Chairman?
Yield 30 seconds.
Gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for an additional 30 seconds.
The President's budget never goes to surplus. There's no plan offered by the Democrats to actually pay back the money that we are borrowing. It's time to put the word back to what it really means, which is spending less than we take in, and it's the Republican budget that offers that this evening. With that, I yield back the balance of my time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlelady from New York.
I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentlelady is recognized.
I would like to respond to my colleague from the other side of the aisle who objected to my calling the Republican plan, which is called the Road to Prosperity, when I said that it actually should be called the Road to Austerity. On the negative side of the Republican plan, the Economic Policy Institute estimates that the Republican austerity plan will destroy 4.1 million jobs through 2014. But at the same time, the Republican budget makes tax cuts for the most fortunate few permanent. while those making over $1 million per year will get an average tax cut of at least $150,000, and tax breaks for big oil will be preserved. That's their plan. The alternative, of course, is the Democratic budget plan, which takes a totally different approach, a balanced approach that meets the nation's need to invest in the future while preserving Medicare and our social safety net and supporting the firm belief that the American dream is alive and well by investing in the future of our children and our nation. Here to close is the ranking member of the Budget Committee from Maryland, Congressman Van Hollen.
Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the gentlelady for her leadership. Can I inquire as to how much time is remaining?
Gentleman has 3 minutes.
I thank the Chairman. I want to close where the gentlelady began, which is on the economy and on jobs. As this chart shows, when the President was sworn in, when President Obama was sworn in, we were losing over 800,000 jobs a month. A month. Because of actions taken by the President and the Congress and because of the tenacity of the American people and small businesses, we were able to stop the free fall and begin to climb out of that hole. We've now had 24 consecutive months of positive private sector job growth, close to 4 million jobs created in that period. We need to sustain that recovery, not put the brakes on it. The Republican proposal, unfortunately, puts the brakes on it. I'll give you just one example. Next year, they would cut our investment in transportation in their budget by 46%, when we have about 17% unemployment in the construction industry. That's putting the brakes on. Now, we hear from our colleagues that the only way to deal with the budget deficits is to cut, cut, cut. We propose a balanced approach. We do ask that we close some of those tax loopholes. We do ask that folks making $1 million a year go back to paying the rates what they were doing in the Clinton administration. Let's see what happened to the economy back then. What this shows is during the Clinton years, 20.8 million jobs were created. After President Bush took office, they did lower the tax rates. Net 653,000 jobs lost. By the way, 2001, just before the tax cuts that disproportionately benefit the wealthy, that was the last time we balanced the budget. We balanced the budget and we had great job growth. That's why we propose a balanced approach. The issue here is not whether we reduce the deficit, not whether we reduce the debt. It's how. Yes, we have to make spending cuts. I hear colleagues on the Republican side coming down here saying you can't do this all on the revenue side. We get that. But you know what? If you do it without asking the folks at the very top to pay a penny, by closing loopholes and getting rid of tax breaks, what does it mean? It means everybody else pays the consequences. Those decisions to support the wealthy, not ask for shared responsibility, comes at the expense of our seniors. You end the Medicare guarantee, you slash Medicaid by $800 billion. It comes at the expense of middle-income taxpayers because not only are you locking in the Bush tax cuts for the folks at the top, you're dropping the top rate from 35% to 25%. That's another over $200,000 tax break to people making $1 million a year. You say you're going to pay for it. You know how it's going to happen? It's going to happen by increasing taxes on middle-income Americans. That's how you're going to finance it. I have not seen a proposal. Show me a piece of paper that says it won't be taken out on middle-income taxpayers. Mr. Chairman, there's a better approach than the Republican approach. It's the balanced approach. It's the approach supported by bipartisan groups, and it's the approach that we will propose in our amendment. And I again thank the gentlelady and thank the Chairman.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the balance of my time to
Gentleman
close.
is recognized.
President Obama made two key promises to the American public. The first was that he would reduce the deficit by half in his first term of office. The second is that he would fix this broken economy in 3 years. Let's take a close look at those promises, looking first at the economy. Today, this is hard to believe, and I hope those at home are sitting down. But after all the bailouts, after all the stimulus, after all the cash for caulkers, the cash for clunkers, the deficit spending, the housing bailout, everything the President wished for and got in increased spending, we have fewer Americans working today than when this President took office. Think about it. There's fewer Americans working after all the President's economic policies have gone full bore, and it's failed the American public in such a way, there's fewer people working today than when this President took the oath of office. Look at the stimulus. This chart shows he promised the American public, if you'll just borrow and spend nearly $1 trillion with interest, our economy recovered. In fact, he promised right now our unemployment rate would be around 6%. It's far above that, nearly 8.5%, but that doesn't tell the whole picture, because so many Americans have given up hope. So many Americans don't even look for a job anymore. They've just dropped out. We have the fewest people in the workforce than in almost 3 decades. They've just given up that much. Our unemployment rate is really nearly 16%, a little above it, as a matter of fact. This is an unemployment crisis. The President's policies, no question, he inherited a poor economy, to say the least. His policies have failed. He's made it worse for about 23 million Americans who can't even find a full-time job these days. If you want more of the same, stick with the President's budget. Stick with the Democrats' budget. They deliver more of the same, an economy that struggles like it hasn't since the Depression, and millions of Americans who just can't find work no matter how hard they try. The President promised he would reduce the deficit, cut it in half in his first term. Should have been able to do that. Instead, he's increased it by almost half. This is the 4th trillion-dollar deficit in a row. He proposes to spend so that we're at the largest government in American history. Larger even than World War II, when we dropped everything to win the war. He wants a government bigger than that, and deficits that go as far as the eye can see. Republicans believe we ought to have a choice of futures. And you look at the debt that's being piled on America in the future. Let me put that in real terms. We have 2 young boys. One's in 3rd grade and one's in 7th. They make our family a joy. And I think about what all this means to them, and you may be thinking about it for your kids, your grandkids. All that red ink this President's piled up, and the future of America with this debt. Today, a baby born today in America, their fair share of the debt is about $47,000. A baby born today owes Uncle Sam a new Lexus. If we don't change our ways, by the time they're 13, they'll owe Uncle Sam a 2nd Lexus. And by the time they're 22 and they finish college, they're getting ready to start their life, they'll owe Uncle Sam a 3rd Lexus. Now, the good news is young people don't actually buy luxury sedans for the federal government, but they pay the price another way. For all that debt, they pay the price in a sluggish economy, in higher taxes, in higher interest rates. So that young person, starting their life after all that schooling, pursuing their dreams in America, they'll have a harder time finding a job. There'll be fewer of them, and they'll keep less in their paycheck as a result of this. That's the future if we stay the course with this President and Democrats in Congress. Republicans believe there's a better future for America, and the Republican budget does just that. It restores a healthy economy for America in a common-sense way. It gets our financial house in future. It starts limiting this out-of-control spending. It's starting taking away all the waste and abuse, sunsetting obsolete agencies, stopping this wasteful spending from stem to stern in the federal budget. It starts to tighten the federal government's belt and budget. It also, in addition to putting our financial house in order, it shrinks the size of government. It makes it affordable again for America. So not only that we balance the budget, the goal of the Republican budget is to pay off our debt. Think about it. Our goal is not to just break even again. It starts to whittle down and pay off those huge amounts of debt that we owe to so many in this world. It tackles important issues like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, preserves them for every generation once and for all. Social Security, for example, last year, America had to borrow $142 billion from China and other foreign investors just to pay Social Security for our seniors. We know Medicare goes bankrupt in 12 years unless we act. If we don't act today, Medicare ends itself as we know it. It ends itself. Republicans have a common sense proposal to preserve those important programs, to make them sustainable for every generation. And we do it without raising taxes. We know you can't take more from people and hope to grow the economy. We know that Washington ought to tighten its belt before we ask hardworking taxpayers to tighten theirs. We know that taxing professionals and small businesses, taxing our local energy companies who manufacture here in the United States. We know that taxing companies that are creating jobs in America is the wrong way to go. We're going to offer and are offering not just a choice of two futures, we're offering some hope to a country that despairs that it will ever see a balanced budget again. We're offering hope to a country that right now has a second-rate economy that some parts of the world make fun of, frankly. We're going to offer hope to businesses who want to compete again, both in their community and around the world, because today what they tell us is they're not adding jobs. With this debt hanging over us, with all the talk of new taxes and new regulation, they're not adding those jobs. Why would they? The Republican budget make sure that we don't balance our budget on the backs of America's small businesses. We know the problem isn't that government doesn't take more of what you earn. The problem is that the federal government spends too much. We offer a path to prosperity to America. It's the only responsible budget that will be offered through this debate. I wish I could say the Senate will take it up, but for 3 years they've refused to give a budget to the American people. We're going to change the trajectory of America. We're going to change the future of America, and we're going to give hope back by passing the Republican budget. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. What's next? Pursuant to the rule, the concurrent resolution is considered read. No amendment shall be in order except those printed in House Report 112-423. Each amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, and shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent. The adoption of an amendment in the nature of a substitute shall constitute the conclusion of consideration of the concurrent resolution for amendment. After conclusion of consideration of the concurrent resolution for amendment, there shall be a final period of general debate which shall not exceed 20 minutes, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on the Budget. It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 1, printed in House Report 112-423. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition?
To claim time in support of the amendment.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment Number 1, in the nature of a substitute, printed in House Report Number 112-423, offered by Mr. Mulvaney of South Carolina.
Pursuant to House Resolution 597, the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Mulvaney, and a member opposed, each will control 10 minutes. Gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, it occurred to me during the budget debate that something was missing from the debate. As my colleagues across the aisle offered their various amendments through the course of the day and into the evening, it occurred to me that the President's budget had not been offered as an amendment by the Democrat members of the House Budget Committee. And then as we were getting information about which amendments were being offered here today on the floor as amendments to the overall GOP budget, it occurred to me that, again, that same oversight had taken place. Clearly, it must be an oversight. Clearly, my colleagues meant to offer the President's budget as an amendment and simply failed to do so. So in a peak of bipartisanship, I thought I'd help my colleagues across the aisle out a little bit and offer the President's budget, which is exactly what this amendment is. This amendment is the President's budget. as analyzed, not scored, but analyzed by the CBO, nothing more and nothing less. It has a lot in here that I imagine my colleagues would like. It has, for example, $1.9 trillion in new taxes. It has new taxes on income, new taxes on the giving of gifts, new taxes on gasoline, and even new taxes on dying. It has $1.5 trillion in new spending, spending on welfare, spending on unemployment, spending on green energy. The term cylindric comes to mind, I would imagine. In fact, it has so many new taxes and so much new spending, it seems to be bringing the phrase tax and spend liberal back into fashion here in Washington, D.C. So clearly, it must simply be an oversight that has not been offered by my colleagues. But that's not all. The budget that the President offered and that is contained in this amendment never balances. Never balance. It is a balanced approach to reach a never balancing budget. It also fails to deal completely with our entitlement problems. So again, I say, Mr. Chairman, I think there's a lot here for my colleagues to like. I look forward to their defense of the President's budget. And in many ways, I would suppose this is a landmark document for the Democrats as we go into this election year. So with that, I'll reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time is reserved. Gentleman from Maryland. For what purpose does the gentleman from Maryland seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I seek recognition to speak on this important issue.
Gentleman opposed?
I am opposed.
Gentleman is recognized for 10 minutes.
And I'm opposed for a simple reason. This document filed by Mr. Mulvaney is not the President's budget. And it's being portrayed as a very misleading, it was a very misleading presentation of the President's budget. This is the President's budget. If you look at all the other budgets presented today, you'll find numbers and you'll find policy statements that describe the policies behind the budget. The thing Mr. Mulvaney filed, no policy. In fact, he just said the President's policy raises gas taxes, I believe. That's just a false statement. The other issue is why you have a number for revenue in the President's budget. You mentioned that there's a revenue number. The President's never pretended otherwise. The President's budget takes a balanced approach to deficit reduction. It makes cuts and it raises revenue. Let's talk about how he raises revenue. He raises revenue in part by getting rid of subsidies on the big oil companies. We think at a time of record profits, we don't need to have taxpayer subsidies for big oil companies. Our Republican colleagues, almost every one of them, have signed this pledge to Grover Norquist saying they won't get rid of one oil subsidy or one tax loophole for the purpose of deficit reduction. Well, the President thinks we need a balanced approach to deficit reduction. Now, you wouldn't know from reading Mr. Mulvaney's document, what he puts in place as the President's budget, that that's how the President raises revenue. You wouldn't know from Mr. Mulvaney's document that the President also asks the very top 2% of taxpayers to go back to paying the same top rate they were during the Clinton administration, a time when the economy was booming, because the President thinks we need to take a balanced approach. Again, a combination of revenues and spending cuts, because the President believes, and I agree, that if you do it the way the Republicans do it, without asking the folks at the very top to share some responsibility, it means you deal with the budget at the expense of everybody else, the expense of seniors, the expense of middle-income Americans, at the expense of important investments in our economy, like investments in transportation. Their budget cuts transportation next year by 46%, at a time we have 17% unemployment in the construction industry. Their budget puts the brakes on the budding economic growth. So, Mr. Chairman, let's end this charade. The gentleman said he wanted to get beyond politics. This is politics at its absolute worst, presenting something as the President's budget without the policy detail, without the explanation to the American people about what's in the President's budget. And as a result, he presents a very misleading version of what the President has asked us to do. In fact, the Democratic alternative that we will propose later adopts the general framework of the President's budget. We don't adopt every single proposal he makes in here, but we take the general framework. The difference is we have those policy statements. We make it clear that we want to get rid of the subsidies for the big oil companies, time they're making record profits. We make it clear that we want millionaires, people making $1 million a year, to go back to paying what they were during the Clinton administration. We make that clear in our alternative. And so let's not play this political charade. We're going to have the Democratic alternative that, as I said, takes the framework of the President's proposal. Our Republican colleagues will have an opportunity to vote against that. But this is not the President's budget. Let's not pretend it is. And I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield 3 minutes now to my good friend from Georgia.
Gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, we really find ourselves in an interesting spot here. The ranking member of Budget finds himself in a very difficult position, standing in opposition of the President's budget. And he says, well, this isn't the President's budget. And for a moment, let's assume it's not. Where is it? Where is it? If it was such a good document, why didn't they present it? We don't understand. I was in a committee meeting today, and the Secretary of Treasury was just going on about how good the President's budget was, how it had that balanced approach, and it had this glide path to reducing the deficit. And I asked him, well, whom from your party is going to present that? He said, I don't know. You would think with such an awesome document that puts us on this great path of a future for our nation, that surely the Democrats would present their own budget. But yet they have to do that. In fact, their side is empty right now. You think it would be full with them lining up to speak in favor of the President's budget, but yet they've yet to do that. In fact, there's much of an exodus here. But let's talk about what the budget really is, because it's more than the framework or the document. It is a vision. It's a vision for where we think we're going to take our nation. And what the President's budget is a vision of debt and dependency. Maybe that's why they didn't present it. But yet we're presenting a much different approach. It's one of opportunity and prosperity. And as we conclude these debates, and they may call it a gimmick, and if they want to call the President's budget a gimmick, let them call that a gimmick. But as we conclude this debate, we're all going to be making a decision. We've been empowered with the opportunity to vote for our constituents. They've given us that voting card, and we're going to have a decision to make. We're going to be choosing between a balanced approach that raises taxes, increases the size of government, increases our debt. It's debt and dependency. Or we can choose the balanced budget approach. The Republican budget lowers taxes, an energy plan, puts us on that path to a balanced budget. That is the choice that will be before us. And so I hope that my colleagues, as they debate the President's budget, maybe they will reject that debt and dependency and choose that path of the balanced budget. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to yield back his time. Gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess we're going to spend the next, I don't know how many minutes, talking about something that's not the President's budget. It's an attempt to be misleading about what the President's budget does because it leaves out all the content, leaves out the substance. You look at the Republican budget, they got a lot of sections on policy. You look at the other alternatives that are being presented, they have alternatives and policy statements. This is a bunch of numbers without the explanation. Now, do the Democrats, for example, think that the President invested enough in his budget in LIHEAP, low-income energy program for low-income individuals? We actually have a majority in our caucus that thinks the President should have put a little more into that. But that's only the kind of detail you would know if you went through the President's budget, not this thing that Mr. Mulvaney claims is the President's budget, which it's just not. So just to be clear, this is not the President's budget, and therefore it obviously is a political gimmick. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Scalise.
Gentleman from Louisiana is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the gentleman from South Carolina for bringing up this debate, and this is the President's budget we're discussing. When you look at this resolution, this contains the same kind of language that any resolution that's brought to the floor contains. But let's talk about what it seems like some members of the Democratic Party on the other side are so afraid to talk about, and that is what the President's budget really does. The President's budget never even comes close to balancing, first of all. So this President, who campaigned 4 years ago on reducing the deficit, on trying to bring fiscal responsibility to Washington, goes the opposite way, adding trillions more dollars of debt, mountains of debt on the backs of our children and grandchildren. And what's worse, if you look at the policies, $1.9 trillion of job-killing tax increases. And what does that mean to families? Hardworking families out there are looking at this, and they're knowing just what this is going to do to jobs in this country when you add another $1.9 trillion. And just look at one part. They love bragging about all the taxes they're raising on American oil. In fact, their budget, President Obama's budget, that we're talking about right now. President Obama's budget adds $40 billion a year in new taxes on American energy. And the irony is, the president's tax increase on American energy doesn't apply to OPEC nations. So OPEC countries are now incentivized to send more oil here, but if you make it in America, it's in the president's budget. Go look at it. $40 billion in new tax increases if you make it in America. What is that going to do to gas prices that are already skyrocketing under President Obama's policies? American families out there know what that means. If you had $40 billion a year in new taxes on American-made energy, that will only increase the price that's already too high. And what's worse is that it kills American jobs, because it says, and President Obama said this, in his budget, President Obama says, if you're OPEC and you're sending us oil, we're not going to raise your taxes in the president's budget, but if you make energy in America, he'll raise taxes $40 billion a year. This is the most warped policy I've ever seen. I hope we reject it and then take up the budget that we're going to present that actually puts us in balance and has good sound policy to create jobs. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I inquire as to how much time
Gentleman
remains?
has 5 minutes.
5 minutes, and Mr. Mulvaney?
The other side has 4 minutes.
4 minutes. I yield myself 2 minutes.
Gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
Let's talk a little bit about energy policy. One of the things you wouldn't know from the document that Mr. Mulvaney put forward, claiming it's the President's budget, is that the President actually provides the resources to the Commodities Future Trading Commission to help police speculators in the oil market. Because what we're seeing today is that because of conditions around the world, a lot of those are being taken advantage of by people who are engaged in excessive speculation on the oil market, driving it up. But the Republican budget doesn't want the cop on the beat. The Republican budget doesn't want to police the speculators because, you know what? They're just doing fine. But again, Mr. Mulvaney's budget, what he pretends is the President's budget, you wouldn't know that. But if you looked in the President's real budget, you would know that kind of thing. And that's why this exercise is such a farce. Mr. Chairman, I reserve the balance of our time.
Gentleman's time is reserved. Gentleman from South Carolina.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to yield 90 seconds to the gentleman from Arizona.
Gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 1½ minutes.
Thank you to my good friend and Mr. Chairman. We actually did this on the floor last night, and part of it was an attempt to sort of help folks through some of the absurdity of the rhetoric compared to the reality of math. And one of the fun slides we brought on is using the current budget numbers and the fact we're borrowing about $3.5 billion a day. We actually have this one board, and we're putting it up on our website, that actually shows a clock. And on that clock it has some of the President's budget policies. And one in there is one we've already sort of heard talked about or alluded to, and people like to call it the Buffett rule. Well, do you realize that all the rhetoric around something like the Buffett rule and those new taxes and those needs for those folks to pay more would pay for, I think we came out with 3 minutes and 30 seconds. It would cover 3 minutes and 30 seconds of borrowing a day. We did some slides earlier that talked about not just taxing big oil, but if you taxed all fossil fuels. And what we're talking about is getting rid of their depletion allowance and actually going after their depreciation tables. That came out to about 2 minutes and 30 seconds of covering borrowing a day. What my reason I stand behind this microphone right now is the political theater of it's great rhetoric. I'm sure it's nice and poll tested, but it doesn't solve any of the problems. And that's why this is a joyous moment to see the other side stand up and embrace the President's budget in such enthusiasm. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from Maryland.
Does the gentleman have any additional? Okay, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time is reserved. Gentleman from South Carolina.
And I'll yield myself the balance of my time.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I hear my good friend from Maryland. I understand he thinks it's a charade. I got the same press release, by the way, from the White House that he got. They called it a gimmick. He calls it a charade. And they go on to talk about how they lack any details. I've got the same stack that my colleague from Maryland has. I have the President's budget here. But we also have what we used to formulate the amendment, which is the analysis of the President's 2013 budget from the Congressional Budget Office. And in there, if you take the time to review it, you'll find the summary of the way the President treats the 2001-2003 tax reductions, the alternative minimum tax, limiting deductions and exclusions, modifying estate and gift taxes, other revenue proposals, more tax provisions, OCO, the Automatic Procedures in the Budget Control Act, the President's cap on deductions and exclusions, the deals with initiatives that will widen the deficit, transportation, Medicare, Medicaid, the Build America Bonds program. The President's budget does not include reductions and increases mandatory outlays. He goes on to talk about overseas contingency, disaster relief, $2 billion for program integrity initiatives. The details are here. The details are here. Let's make no mistake about what we're voting on. This is the President's budget. Again, I got the White House memo, and it says, you know, we encourage Democrats to vote against our own budget, is what the President said today, because what could be in this amendment is raising taxes on the middle class. It could be in here, Mr. Chairman, but only if it's in here. They go on to say that this amendment could include severe cuts to important programs, and I guess in theory it could, but only if it's in here. Let's make one thing and one thing extraordinarily clear. This is the President's budget. This is the CBO, the nonpartisan analysis of what the President gave us, of what I guess several millions of dollars of tax dollars were spent in preparing. We spent an entire day debating this and examining this in the Budget Committee. It's not a charade. It's not a gimmick unless what the President sent us is the same. We are voting on the President's budget. I would encourage my Democrats to embrace this landmark Democrat document and support it. Personally, I'll be voting against it. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My friend from South Carolina wants to play make-believe today, but the reality is that this is not the President's budget. We've already shown you the President's budget. I yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the 1 minute. Let me just say one thing. You know, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all of the people all of the time. And I can tell you the Republican budget is not fooling anybody. And I just want to talk about one aspect of the President's budget on transportation. We know for every $1 billion that we spend, it generates 44,000 jobs. However, the Republicans refused to pass a budget. The Transportation Committee throughout the history have been bipartisan. We have worked together. The Republicans and the Democrats over in the Senate have passed the bill. The Republicans refused to take up the bill on transportation because for once you don't want to put the American people back to work. I say again, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all of the people all of the time. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Maryland.
Mr. Chairman, how much time remains?
Gentleman has 2 3/4 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, we can stand here all we want and play let's pretend. The reality is that the budget that's before us is not the President's budget. As I indicated earlier, the Democratic alternative later takes the framework of the President's budget and adopts some of the policies of the President's budget. We don't accept every single spending proposal or spending cut, which is laid out in great detail here, but that presents a framework. And I should say to my colleagues that one of the things you would not know from reading this Republican version of the President's proposal is that unlike the Republican budget, the President's plan does not end the Medicare guarantee. It does not extend tax breaks for the highest income Americans. It doesn't provide another windfall tax cut for those Americans financed by increasing taxes on middle-income Americans. It doesn't cut the transportation budget by 46% next year at a time when we have high unemployment in the construction industry. The President's budget doesn't do that. The Republican budget does do that. We will later present that balanced approach that says in order to tackle our deficits, we have to make some cuts, some tough cuts. Congress has already made $1 trillion in cuts. We have more cuts. But we should also close some of those special interest tax loopholes for the purpose of reducing the deficit. Because if we don't do that, it means that we're providing, essentially asking nothing of the very wealthy, and that means we have to reduce the deficit at the expense of everybody else in America. So let's end this charade. Let's end this game of make-believe. This is not the President's budget, and unless there's some of our colleagues who want to play fantasy land, I suggest we get down to reality, and that's why we're opposing this document, the Mulvaney Amendment. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. All time for debate has expired. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from South Carolina. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Chairman, I ask the yeas and nays be recorded.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from South Carolina will be postponed. Ready. It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 2, printed in House Report 112-423. For what purpose does the gentleman from Missouri seek recognition?
Mr. Chair, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment Number 2, in the nature of a substitute, printed in House Report Number 112-423, offered by Mr. Cleaver of Missouri.
Pursuant to House Resolution 597, the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Cleaver, and a member opposed, each will control 15 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Missouri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I first want to acknowledge all 42 members of the Congressional Black Caucus who endorsed this presentation, but especially our Budget, Appropriations, and Taxation Task Force and the FY13 budget chairs, Congressman Bobby Scott, Congresswoman Gwen Moore, and Congresswoman Karen Bass, who is the MC at a dinner and cannot be here with us. This budget, Mr. Chair, itself is a statement of our beliefs as a nation. It is the way we choose to run government and help the people we serve. Our FY 2013 alternative federal budget will address the deficit while protecting important safety net programs needed by our communities. The CBC's top priorities for the 112th Congress are promoting job creation and economic development, providing lifetime educational opportunities, protecting access to health care, and protecting the right to vote and justice for all Americans. We can only make these priorities a reality by sustaining and strengthening the programs that invest in and protect all Americans, whether it is workforce investment, unemployment insurance, investment in unemployment, temporary assistance for needy families, or TANF, or with the onslaught of these voter laws across the country, proper funding of the Election Assistance Commission. These programs are vital to national interest because they train our workforce, stabilize our economy, and provide funding for our cities and states throughout the nation. I understand that now is the time for us as Americans to sacrifice in order to protect our children and our children's children. However, we struggle as a caucus to understand how the proposed majority budget helps achieve this goal. More recently, due to many strategic investments led by the President, the nation's overall unemployment rate has been lowered. However, the African-American unemployment rate remains nearly double the national average. In order to improve this dire situation and to ensure every American's full recovery, we must make smart and targeted investments for all America's vulnerable communities. Government investment in people, education, infrastructure, and innovation can create jobs. Over time, the jobs created by these strategic investments pay for themselves and then some. Investments allow people to earn, learn, spend, and save. Cutting programs that assist hardworking Americans, help families with their most basic needs, maintain our crumbling infrastructure, and expand access to educational opportunities will only make unemployment statistics worse. Our success as a nation is interwoven in the success of all communities. Until we grasp that concept as a nation, we will never see the full potential of the United States of America, and for that I am truly concerned. Mr. Chair, I would like to yield time to the chairman of our committee, Bobby Scott of Virginia.
How much time?
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the Congressional Black Caucus budget is a more credible and more responsible alternative than the underlying Republican budget. The CBC budget is a plan that significantly reduces our deficit over the next decade while increasing economic opportunities and promoting job creation in every corner of our society. Deficit reduction is about making tough choices, but the path to fiscal responsibility must not be on the backs of our nation's most vulnerable communities. Our budget makes those tough choices, but it doesn't jeopardize Social Security, turn Medicaid into a block grant, or dismantle the Medicare guarantee. The fundamental choice we have to make is a choice between millionaires and Medicare. The CBC budget extends the Bush-era tax cuts only for the hard-working middle-class American families, but pays for this extension through tax reform by closing corporate loopholes and giveaways, deterring aggressive speculation in the stock market, the speculation that helped create the 2008 fiscal crisis and the recent gas price increase. And we ensure that millionaires who benefited most from income growth, tax cuts, and bailouts in the last decade contribute their fair share. With additional revenue, the CBC budget restores funding for important programs cut in the Budget Control Act of 2011. We cancel the sequester for security and non-security programs. We match the Democratic alternative on defense spending, and our budget also makes targeted investments that will create jobs in the short term by funding transportation and infrastructure projects, and our budget will ensure our long-term prosperity by investing in education and job training initiatives, including an increase in the maximum Pell Grant by nearly $1,000 to $6,500. The CBC budget will positively impact every sector of our economy, will cement the foundation of a strong economic recovery, and reduce the deficit by $770 billion more over the next decade than the Republican budget, as this chart shows. The CBC budget outlines specific recommendations to achieve this goal. The Republican budget, on the other hand, simply instructs the Ways and Means Committee to find $4 trillion in new revenues, and then instructs the Appropriations Committee to find spending cuts in the range of almost $1 trillion. In light of the fact that the Super Committee failed to find $1.2 trillion, it is unlikely that anybody will figure out how to fill this $5 trillion hole in the Republican budget. But even if they do, the CBC budget still has $770 billion more in deficit reduction than the Republican budget. Mr. Chairman, there is a clear difference between the Republican budget and the CBC budget, and that difference is the CBC budget chooses Medicare over millionaires. I urge my colleagues to support the Cleaver Amendment to ensure a fairer and more prosperous future for America. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time is reserved. For what purpose does the gentleman from Utah seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I claim time in opposition.
Gentleman is recognized for 15 minutes.
I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I stand in opposition to this budget, but I am proud of the fact that we're actually debating a budget. For you see, you look over to the other body, you look to the United States Senate, and you'll see that it's been more than 1,050 days, an exceptional amount of time, years in fact, since the United States Senate has actually discussed the budget. And here we are debating a budget. There's a contrast in vision. There's a contrast in priorities, but we're debating this. On some issues, there is some common ground, but on other things, there is a divergence in our approach. Now, compare this budget that's being presented here as an amendment raises taxes by more than $6 trillion. Now, Mr. Chairman, let me put in context what $1 trillion is. If you spent $1 million a day, every day, it would take you almost 3,000 years to get to $1 trillion. See, what we have to have is a realization of the fiscal woes that we face in ourselves. I didn't create this mess, but I am here to help clean it up. And the reality is we cannot face tens of trillions of dollars in debt because there's a consequence of that. The consequence of this massive debt, rising interest rates, devaluation of the dollar. There's so many things. Inflation as you throw more money into the marketplace. Imagine what this world would be like if we didn't have what will be at the end of this year nearly $16 trillion in debt. Because right now we're paying more than $600 million a day in interest on that debt. And so while I think there is common ground and appreciation of what needs to happen for our kids and our future and investments that we do need to make, what they would like to do in terms of infrastructure and roads and all these types of things, and our military, we're saddled with a $16 trillion debt. And so we don't have that $600 million a day. We really don't get anything for that. We have to pay interest on that. And that's where you see a contrast. What is being proposed here versus what the Republicans are offering in their budget, which is passed through the Budget Committee, is they want to spend $5.3 trillion more over 10 years than what we have proposed. And so I stand in opposition to this. I appreciate the passion and commitment they have to their agenda. But I do want to recognize, and I do hope we can applaud on both sides of the aisle, at least here in the House of Representatives, we're actually debating a budget. With that, I'll reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time is reserved. Gentleman from Missouri.
Madam Chair, I would like to yield 3 minutes to the distinguished gentlewoman from Wisconsin, Ms. Moore.
Gentlelady from Wisconsin is recognized for 3 minutes.
And thank you so much, Chairman Cleaver, and thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, prior to 1994, Congress acted to ensure that Americans had guaranteed support under the Social Security Act. It was a three-legged stool. The American Social Contract provided retirement security for retirees through Social Security, health coverage for elders with Medicare, dignified care for the infirm and disabled under Medicaid, and sustenance for low-income families with children. Now, in 1994, on a bipartisan basis, this body breached the Social Security Act's contract with the people and, quote-unquote, ended welfare as we know it. Now, this Republican budget says that that is a model for what this budget should do. It recalls that victory, and I quote from the narrative under the Path to Prosperity, a blueprint for American renewal, this budget completes the successful work of transforming welfare by reforming other areas of America's safety net to ensure that welfare does not entrap able-bodied citizens into lives of complacency and dependency, unquote. We've heard on this floor that we want to make sure that the safety net does not become a hammock. So in other words, Medicare and Medicare recipients are now welfare recipients. And so what this budget does is it ends the guarantee of health care for retirees, turning it into a voucher program, and cuts $30 billion over the next decade. Program Medicaid. It is now a welfare program, and Grandma, who's in the nursing home, is now a welfare recipient who's laying in a hammock instead of living out her life in dignity. And you cut $810 billion out of that fund over the next decade. Another entitlement program, food stamps, which served 45 million people during this recession. Half of all Americans are now poor. You're going to mend that entitlement program by cutting $134 billion out over the next decade. The CBC budget rejects the breach of the Social Security Act and renews that contract with Americans. It rejects the 62% of the Republican budget that cuts $5.3 trillion, 62% of it taken from those Americans who are most vulnerable. And yet, it provides deficit reduction of $3.4 trillion over a 10-year period of time. Yes, we do have different priorities. We prioritize retirees, elders, the disabled and infirm over millionaires. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, may I inquire about the remainder, please, of my time?
The gentleman has 6 minutes remaining.
Thank you. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time is reserved. Gentleman from Utah.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to yield 2 minutes. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Hanna.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you for yielding. And I'm speaking on the previous offering by Mr. Mulvaney. I'd like to rise and speak in opposition to the administration's proposed 2013 budget plan. I'd like to speak about one particular issue of concern. Despite the administration's emphasizing of the importance of cybersecurity and the need to retain our technological edge, this budget presents a stark contradiction to these priorities. Key program areas that are essential to maintaining our nation's 21st Defense Initiative have been unreasonably slashed in this proposal. For example, the Air Force's science and technology cyber funding has been cut 17%. Over $1 billion has been cut from the Air Force's total funding level for research, development, testing, and evaluation programs. I can personally attest to the innovative accomplishments that are produced by the Air Force research labs, such as Rome Lab in Rome, New York. For instance, the Air Force research labs were the first to institute computer network attack and exploitation as a formal science and technology discipline. Secretary Panetta has warned that a cyber attack could very well be the next Pearl Harbor that our nation confronts. Both our defense enterprises and our commercial economy have become dependent on information technology, which makes it critical that we protect our networks. We can't say one thing and do another when it comes to prioritizing our 21st century cyber defenses. I urge my colleagues to support our national security by voting against this budget plan, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time.
Mr. Chairman, I'll reserve the balance of our time.
Gentleman's time is reserved. Gentleman from Missouri.
Mr. Chairman, I'll yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from the U.S. Virgin Islands, Dr. Donna Christensen.
Gentlelady from the Virgin Islands is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong and proud support of the Congressional Black Caucus budget, which builds on the President's and the Democratic budget, is fiscally responsible, and restores America's promise and invests in our future. As a physician and chair of the Health Brain Trust, I'm particularly pleased with the investment we make in health. The CBC budget provides an additional $10 billion in 2013, which protects Medicare and Medicaid, fully funds the Affordable Care Act, the Minority AIDS Initiative, and the AIDS Drug Assistance Program. It supports offices of minority health and finally provides adequate funding for the new institute at NIH. We provide robust funding for important prevention and public health programs like the Block Grant, maternal and child health, oral health programs, and community-centric efforts to address the socioeconomic determinants of health. And we increase funding for substance abuse and mental health, for the training of underrepresented minorities in the health workforce, and for the first time for health facilities improvements and construction. Healthcare is a right, and the CBC, through this budget, ensures that all Americans will enjoy that right. We make a strong investment in health and much more, and we still reduce the deficit by $3.4 trillion over the next 10 years. I urge an aye vote, and I yield back my time.
Gentleman's time is reserved. Gentleman from Utah.
Mr. Chairman, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
One of the moral obligations that I think is not only to the current generation and to the older Americans who've poured their hearts and soul into this contract. They've lived with the assumption certain things are going to be there. We have to live up to those obligations, but we also have to live up to the obligations we have for our kids and grandkids. One of my goals and objectives is to leave this country better than how we found it. And one of the things that the House Republican budget does is, over the course of time, it balances the budget and pays off the debt, which is something we have to do. So the fundamental question becomes, how do you do that? Now, I think where we have some common ground is we want to broaden the base. The Republicans are suggesting that we lower the rates. Let people keep their own money, spend their own money. That is fundamentally what the United States of America is all about. The contrast here in what's being proposed is they want to broaden the base, again, common ground, but they want to raise the rates. And that's where I think we have a fundamental challenge. Now we talk about what people have to pay in their fair share and whatnot, but let's look historically what's happened in the United States of America. Historically, we have spent less than 20% of our gross domestic product. The President, in when the Democrats controlled the House, the Senate, and the presidency, they raised that up over 24%. That is more than 24 cents out of every dollar spent in this country was spent by the federal government. I think that's immoral. I think it's wrong. We have an obligation. We have a duty to live within our means and provide opportunity and liberty for people to thrive. No matter where they are in life, the United States of America is about freedom, it's about liberty, it's about the opportunity to succeed. And that's the foundation of this country. That's what I'm committed to. That's what a responsible federal government does. The proper role of government is limited in its scope, but the proper role of government is a role of government. And that, to me, means the Department of Defense and other things to protect our nation. That's where we should put our priorities, and that's why I think this budget that the House Republicans have proposed is so responsible. I don't think we're just one good tax increase away from prosperity in this country, and that's in part why I stand in opposition to this amendment. Reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time is reserved. Gentleman from Missouri.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Corrine Brown.
Gentlelady from Florida is recognized for 1 minute.